Good morning again, and welcome to Green Dragon Temple. Green Gulch is not always an easy place to get to, but you've made it. And I'm happy that you're here. And I'm happy that I'm here. And good morning to the online community that I can't see but wish I could. I guess some of you can see each other, or at least each other's names. Welcome to you. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad to have so many good Dharma companions. My name is Steph, and I'm a resident here at Green Gulch. I'm a former monk, and I'm a mom of 2 children. But most importantly, I'm a person who's deeply committed to practice. Together with and for all beings. My intention today to awaken fully together right now. Is there something else to be doing? I'm holding this stick, and I was thinking, what this is really for is if I get into trouble up here, I can reach up and hook the sky. So we'll see. A few themes for today: dragons, karma, and unsurpassed, complete, perfect everydayness. So, where should we start? Well, we start where we are. That is an essential aspect of Zen. Right here, surrounded by dragons. So, this is Green Dragon Temple, and this is, I want to remind us, the year of the dragon. Green Dragon Temple, year of the dragon. That's double dragon. The forecast is good fortune. In Chinese culture, dragons are not fire-breathing beasts. They don't need to be slayed. Slain? Slayed? They're not aggressive destroyers. They represent power, strength, wisdom, action, the wholesome kind. They are water deities that foster harmony. So, year of the dragon, Green Dragon Temple, and also an election year. So I am calling on the yang in all of us, the straightforward, the active, the powerful, the decisive, the bright, the light, the joyful. Please let us gather these dragon energies and use them to foster harmony. Coincidentally, one of my Dharma positions at Green Gulch is to take care of the drinking water system. And so I think about water a lot, the power and fragility of water. And so water deities are right up my alley because I am happy to receive all the help I can get. So now that we've invoked our dragon qualities, let us wander into the meandering stream of karma. Karma is the sum of our actions that cause future manifestations. Karma is the sum of our actions that cause future manifestations. Imagine a flowing stream of your actions of body, speech, and mind. Does this feel liberating or worrisome? Well, of course, that depends. And specifically, it depends on your intention. Did you notice that I started the talk by stating my intention? Anybody remember my intention? Awakening together right now. I mean, what are we waiting for, right? So, of course, what actually happens during this talk is not in my control, but we're doing this thing together, so we are creating something. And still, I recommend being aware of and stating your intention. Why? Because in Buddhist practice, intention is identified as the determiner of karmic consequence. It's not that you always need to express your intention out loud, but it is appropriate to look, to inquire, to be aware of, and to study your intention if you wish to care for, awaken to, realize, and so on. Manjushri, the big fella on the cushion sitting in front of me in the middle of the room, is a helpful companion in the stream of body, speech, and mind. Manjushri represents wisdom. Lately, I've been inviting Manjushri to hang out with me. Why not? Clarity, discernment. I could use this kind of company. This summer, my siblings and I had to find a way to get our dad out of his house and into memory care. I asked Manjushri to come and help us. And she did. What is my intention regarding my body? Welcome what is arising. What is my intention regarding my speech? I'd like to do a good job for you. I can even get nervous about that. I so want to do a good job for you. What I want is to encourage your practice. And encourage your confidence in practice. So regarding speech, I wrote, by the way, I want to contain most of my complaints while I work to clarify them. So I'm working with my complaints internally to clarify them so I can finally express them in a straightforward way. What is my intention regarding my mind? I wish to realize peace together with all beings. Manifesting peace by sitting peacefully. And no, not later, right now. Nothing is saved for later. If my intention is clarified, I will have a better chance of performing it with my body, speech, and mind. So it's really my main job. Conversely, controlling outcomes is not my job. While studying my intention, I am also aware that I am part of what's going on, whether I like what's going on or not. Again, my main job, to observe and care for my intention. My intention is not really mine. It's kind of like my kids are mine, but they're not really mine. My job is to take care of those two beings and those relationships, but they're not really mine. Does this mean that everything will work out according to my plan? No. Having my way is not a Buddhist teaching. And you having your way is also not a Buddhist teaching. Caring for your intention and meeting the sum of your action of body, speech, and mind with straightforwardness, that is practice realization. I'm liking that word a lot, straightforwardness. So there's this election coming up, right? Let's look closely at our intentions, because it's time for us to choose an American president for the next 4 years. And if you are interested in the 3 pure precepts in Buddhism, not doing harm, doing good, and doing good for the sake of everybody, then it is appropriate to enact your intention by voting. On, or preferably before, Tuesday, November 5th of this year. For a person whose actions of body, speech, and mind seem to be in accord with not doing harm, doing good for the sake of everyone. In our democratic situation, it is also important to vote in opposition to a person who is frolicking in greed, hate, and delusion, and propagating it in others. And just not voting can have the effect of giving support to a candidate that you didn't actually want to support. I guess you can tell I'm looking forward to voting. For someone who seems capable of fostering harmony. Express yourself so wholeheartedly that you do not grasp expectations and are able to thrive in practice before, during, and after a critical election. If and when I do not get what I want in my life, I vow never to stop practicing. That's my intention. Incidentally, stopping practice is a delusion, but you can do a lot of harm with your delusions. You can think, or worse, you can say out loud, I give up, I quit. Where did practice get me anyway? And that can be really confusing to others who are also struggling with discouragement. When we create and grasp expectations, we suffer. Dharma friends can support one another to express ourselves so fully that we don't have to get exactly what we want to thrive and grow. But when we're practicing wholeheartedly, we do thrive and grow no matter what. And that leads us to unsurpassed, complete, perfect everydayness. Dainin Katagiri, one of my Dharma grandfathers, liked to say, Buddha is your everyday life. I never met Dainin Katagiri, but I had the joy of knowing Tamoy Katagiri, to whom he was married over several years in my early Zen practice. I regard her as a great Zen teacher, but I would be in big trouble if she heard me say that. Tomoe-san was my first sewing teacher. She taught Nyohoe sewing to Zen students, the sewing of Buddha's robe, this garment that I'm wrapped in, and the little Rockas Su that you'll see other people wearing. So people sew Buddha's robe in preparation for receiving the robe along with Buddhist precepts. And now I am the sewing teacher at Green Gulch. It's another of my Dharma positions. And I assist students with sewing Buddha's robe. When I finished sewing my first Rockas Su in 2001, I wasn't ready to give up spending time with Tomoe-san, so exuberant for life she was. So I immediately began sewing another Rockas Su. Someone in the Sangha gifted me with fabric to use, and I was thrilled because I had heard, it was even rumored that the Buddha had said that the best fabric to use for sewing Buddha's robe was fabric that was given as a gift or fabric that was discarded. It turns out that the fabric that I was given had a lot of elasticity to it, and it was very challenging for me to sew straight lines. And Tomoe-san observed my challenge and offered to let me off the hook. She offered to let me start over with a sturdier fabric. But no, I was clear. Buddha's robe had been started with this given fabric. It must be completed. Tomoe-san smiled, and I continued sewing. Later, a sewing assistant was cutting white panels for the calligraphy on the back and was multitasking. He was cutting fabric while holding a cordless phone between his ear and his shoulder. Silly Zen student. He made a mistake and miscut the panel. He expressed an expletive and threw the panel in the trash. Aha! I took it out of the trash and said delightedly, discarded fabric. This is perfect for my imperfect Rockas Su. But when it was time for me to add the white panel to the back, I found that my right angles were not right angles at all, and there was no way I could get the white panel to fit. And then I sincerely felt like I'd failed, and my confidence evaporated. Can you relate to that experience? It just evaporated. I put the white panel back into the trash. I enacted giving up. At that moment, Tomoe-san swept across the room and plucked the white panel from the trash. She said fiercely, "You wanted to give it life? Well, give it life." I wondered how this was going to happen because I knew that the panel would not fit. It was definitely too small. Then I watched her take another strip of fabric out of the trash and wordlessly thread a needle. She began sewing the two pieces together with a neat hidden seam. I could not believe what I was seeing. She had a reputation for being very precise with sewing and strict. And here she was creating a seam right down the full edge of the panel, a blatant imperfection on Buddha's robe. How on earth was this going to work as a canvas for the calligraphy? the teacher writes on the back some beautiful calligraphy, and this panel had a seam, and I couldn't understand how this could work. While I was puzzling about what was happening, she finished sewing, inserted the panel into place, and repinned the Rockas Su for the next step. Then she handed it to me, smiling silently. What was Tomoe-san's gift? I always felt that she respected my enthusiasm and love for practice. Then, in a moment when my confidence collapsed and I dramatized giving up, she did something that shocked everybody. The sewing teacher met my failure by creating a giant imperfection right across the back of Buddha's robe. She demonstrated there's no failure that warrants giving up practice. Not only did that make a lasting impression on me, but I never stopped sewing Buddha's robe. Some of you are doing this together with me now. And now that I am a sewing teacher, I have many opportunities to meet Zen students in their failure. And perhaps it's my favorite thing about teaching. So I can pass along a thread of Tomoe-san's wondrous understanding. When the project was finally complete, I felt just a little embarrassed that it was a very wobbly rectangle. It was crooked. I wasn't too embarrassed, just a little embarrassed. So I went to Tomoe-san and I was wearing it and I wanted to thank her for helping me. And I said, I'm sorry that it's so crooked. And she said with a beaming smile, "It will straighten out as you wear it." And the Rockas Su was later calligraphed with one word, vow. I wonder if now I may ask you about your practice. May I ask you about your practice? Is there any obstacle to your practice? I have a few questions. Maybe we can dialogue about this soon in the question and answer period or the dialogue period. So I'll just start with the questions. Is there any obstacle to your practice? Anything holding you back from sitting upright, opening your shoulders, feeling the breath moving in your body? Is there anything preventing you from fully appreciating life? Anything stopping you from swimming through the sky? So, feels a little bit vain, but I just want to point out this special moment in time, our moment in time. The other thing that arose for me is to say something about what I often hear people bringing up. I often hear as perhaps some sort of obstacle to practice. And I even feel that for myself. I even feel this obstacle to practice when I am looking at news, for instance. It's the feeling of heartbreak or intense sorrow. When I looked up the word heartbreak, it was defined as like the feeling of strong loss, especially the loss of a family member. But I felt like, wow, but I think we're just in a time where it's not that it's our family member, but of course it is more broadly our family member because we are all connected. So we're feeling this heartbreak. People are using the word heartbreak a lot. But I want to say that although my mind sometimes might think this is too much, I am thinking of Mother Teresa, who speaks of suffering as Christ disguised in its terrible forms. And I feel inspired by the way she offered her life to care for the suffering of others. And that is the light. So I am offering an antidote to heartbreak, which is to notice that your broken heart, your sorrow on behalf of the suffering of others, is itself the light. So it's just the time to appreciate yourself. And care for the light. I wonder if that came through. I made an effort. I want to try again, even though some people are nodding at me kindly. I want to try again and say, you are the light. In your brokenheartedness, you are still the light. You are the wisdom when you have tears rolling down your face because of cruelty. That's wisdom. So it's just misunderstood to recoil from heartbreak. It's just a misunderstanding. Heartbreak just belongs in your warm lap, in the warm lap of wisdom. Ring the bell that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. That's how the light gets in. That's how the light gets in. In response to cruelty, the feeling of heartbreak is the appropriate response. Gil was a speaker last week, and he reminded us, when you are sad, be a sad Buddha. He has a really gentle voice. I could tone it down a little bit. When you're sad, be a sad Buddha. It's beautifully soft and simple when he says it. Sadness belongs in sad Buddha's lap. When I meet a sad Buddha, I might whisper, I am with you. I am with you. I am with you. The most noble thing to be is what you are. Wanting what is arising to be different is the Buddhist definition of suffering. But meeting what is arising with straightforwardness and having the clarity that you want all beings to be free from suffering, that is the definition of the Bodhisattva vow. And it turns out that being a bodhisattva is a very rewarding occupation. And now, to signal the end of this meandering stream, let us return for a moment to dragons, because I think we could benefit from what they represent. By dragons, I mean harmonious water deities, imbued with light, wisdom, strength, buoyancy, and joy, swimming through the sky joyfully. Let's plunge into the awakening that is at hand in the only way possible, together. I brought the Rockas Su that I was speaking of. The wobbly, not so rectangular Rockas Su. On the back with the word calligraphed vow and this seam sewn by the strict sewing teacher in Minnesota to teach me once and for all that no failure is worth giving up on practice. Well, and I could give a transitional reading, or I could turn it over to you for your dialogue, for your questions and expressions. What do you think? Anybody eager to get to questions and expressions, or would a transition be useful?
I'm hearing transition.
Transition. So my children still allow me to read to them. So happy about that. So this is a children's story. It's called Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. There's a dragon in the story and a young girl on a quest. His name is Minli. As Minli stared, the old man looked at her. The silver hair of his beard seemed to flow like a glowing waterfall and disappear into the folds of his robes, and his dark eyes matched the blackness of the night sky. "Ah," said the old man, "it's you." Minli nodded and bowed deeply. She would have kneeled on the ground, but she was afraid of disrupting the clay figures standing on the ground at her feet. "Well, come here then," the old man said impatiently, and he tapped his stick on the ground again. And with a sound like a flapping of a bird's wing, the clay figures moved, clearing a path for Minli. "I know you have questions for me," the old man said. "Every 99 years, someone comes here with their questions, but I will answer only one. So choose your question carefully." One question? Minli almost stopped, walking in shock. If she was only allowed to ask one question, she could not ask Dragon's question for him, unless she did not ask her own. Minli felt like a fish gasping for air. What was she going to do? The memories of the hard work in the rice fields, her father's careworn hands, the plain rice in the dinner bowls, and Ma's sighs washed upon her like the splashes of water from the lake. She had to change her fortune. She must ask how to do that. But when Minli thought about Dragon, waiting for her patiently, it was as if she had been struck. And like seeds falling from Wu Kang's tree, images of Dragon rained upon her, their laughter as they passed the monkeys, his awkward struggles walking in the woods, his echoing roar as he flung the green tiger into the air, the kind hand he put on her shoulder when she cried, and the hopeful look in his eyes as she left. "Dragon is my friend," Minli said to herself. "What should I do?" Minli's thoughts bubbled faster and faster like boiling rice. Every step she took seemed to throb, and Minli wasn't sure if the pounding was her heart or Wukong's axe in the distance. As she passed the clay statues, she thought she could see figures of the goldfish man, the buffalo boy, the king, and Da-Ah-Fu silently watching her. Minli's feet seemed to ignore her pleas for slowness, like the kite being pulled in. She was being drawn toward the old man of the moon without delay. Before she could decide whose question to ask, Minli found herself facing him. The old man of the moon looked at her expectantly, his black eyes as unreadable as the night sky. Minli looked down into the open book on his lap. She recognized the open page as the king's borrowed line. The smoothed out folds and the holes she had made in it when she had turned it into a kite were still there. Yet now the paper was invisibly fastened in the book, with only a thin line like a scar showing that it had ever been removed. And the words had changed again. There was a single line of words running down the entire page. As she looked, Minli realized for the first time she could read the words, or really, the word. For the line was only made of one word written over and over again, and that word was thankfulness. And suddenly, like the light when the clouds move away from the moon, Minli knew clearly what question to ask. I invite dragons and elephants. I invite your expressions and questions or verses. Goodbye and thank you.
I'm asking for a friend. You've lived in monastic life and in community for a long time. Do you have words of advice for those of us who are householders and have all of that activity and challenge without the supportive?
Yes.
Yeah.
I am with you. I am with you. I am with you. And what I mean is, I remember how much harder it is. It's so much harder. It is really a privilege to live in a temple because of the support that is manifest. So my advice to those who don't have that privilege right now is remember that we are with you. We are with you. If we are doing our practice here in the temple, we are with you. We remember you. And it's hard to remember that when you're not coming to the same place every day and seeing the same bodies, like literally surrounded by bodies. When I first came to Green Gulch and knew that I wanted to live here, I had student loans and personal debt that I felt like I'd better take care of that if I want to be a monk. And so I left the monastery, and that was a good long period of brokenheartedness for me, because I was not doing what I really wanted, what I clearly knew I wanted to do. I was separated from that. So I had some practices during that time, including putting my hand over my heart, like using my own body as a reminder to myself. So I really like to put my hand on my heart, or two hands on my heart. I would fall asleep that way often, because there was this longing, or there was, the feeling of separation. But also, because I'm a mom, I spend a lot of time interfacing with other moms at school. You know, my whole life is not limited here to the temple. I have a householder life. So I do know what you're talking about. And I take my practice with me everywhere. Everywhere. Maybe get out of your house more and take your practice, if you can, and take your practice with you. Take practice on the road. Take it to the gas station if you're going there. Take it to Safeway. Take it to the polls.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I cried 3 times.
Thanks for being my partner.
Yeah, happy to. I think one of the obstacles I often face is probably not super unique to me. You gave us such a great teaching on the heartbreak. I'm wondering about fear. Fear about how things may turn out. Fear about whether I'm capable of doing this, whether I can show up. Fear about just not knowing how it's all going to go. How do we live with and practice with fear?
The word respect comes up for me. And respect means to look again. So if I think of the things, I can easily just think of some things that are terrifying. I can easily do that. And I want to look again. What is going on here? What am I doing? What's arising, and what am I inventing? So I want to meet what's arising, but sometimes my fears are just sort of invented. Can you relate to that?
I can. Sometimes I feel like my fears are always invented.
Well, again, also being with, I am with you. I had opportunity to say that as a mom, recently when I had a child who wasn't sleeping and then was worrying about not sleeping. We all can relate to that, right? So you wanted to be rested the next day. So I know this so well, and there is my beloved child starting to, demonstrate anxiety about not being able to sleep. And my job was just, that was fear, right? But I was right there demonstrating, I am with you. If you're not sleeping, I'm just right here not sleeping with you. And I'm glad to be here. And if I fall asleep and you are worried about not sleeping, please wake me up. And the child's like, why? And I'm like, because I want to be with you. If you have children, does that sound familiar? You want to be with them. You don't want them to be suffering, but you want to be there. What do you think?
I was worried about sleeping last night, so it's very timely, and it's true, and it's going to be okay.
Okay, so I forever have caused Tanahashi appearing to me when I can't sleep, because 20 years ago or so, when I was studying Zen in a temple in Minnesota, Kaz traveled from Berkeley to St. Paul, and his teaching at that time was, when you are stuck, he was saying it in the first person, when I am stuck, I celebrate because awakening is possible. And he gave the example, for example, if I awake in the night and I can't sleep and I can't stop thinking and I'm feeling agitated, I just appreciate that. I mean, easier said than done. And yet, happily, when I have trouble sleeping and I'm starting to agitate, I don't think sheep, I think Kaz Tanahashi. And I just feel in such good company. And now hearing you say that, I feel like, maybe you will come to my mind. There's Baizan, and I will feel in such good company that it's okay. It's fine. So I'm going to be tired tomorrow? Okay. We'll try again the next night, right? Sleep is important. And yet.
Thank you.
I'll follow up on fear with doubt. I heard this question in a talk I was listening to, and I can't get it out of my mind. Supposedly it came from Einstein, but I don't know. He said, the most fundamental question is the universe kind? And I was like, how would we know the answer to that? But it seems so important.
Ask me the question.
Is the universe kind?
Yes.
How do you know?
It's not about knowing. It's about yesing. It is about being. This is my moment. This is our moment. This is our moment. Einstein, thank you, Einstein. He had his moment. This is your moment and my moment. Ask me the question again.
Is the universe kind?
Yes.
Yeah, I had a moment, while you were talking, when you said something about us being the light. And I thought, yeah, that's the answer also, I think, is that if we're the light, then we know.
May I ask you a question?
How do you know?
Wait, was that you asking me a question? Is that you avoiding a question? May I ask you a question?
Sure.
Is the universe kind?
I hope so.
Okay. Do you want to ask me again?
Is the universe kind?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I say the universe is perfectly imperfect. And just be with it. And don't resist it. and just stay here. I also liked your comment about the crack letting the light in. That's a beautiful metaphor. Without cracks, the light can't get in. And I'll be remembering that when shit hits fan. I'll say, where's the gift? Where's the present? It's in the moment. Yeah, so thank you for your talk.
You're welcome, and thank you, Leonard Cohen.
I think about the Heart Sutra, you know, that line, and the mind is no hindrance. Without any hindrance, no fears exist.
Would you say it again? Slow down a little.
Yeah. And the mind is no hindrance. Without any hindrance, no fears exist. So I just think about that when I get some symptom that I'm experiencing fear. And I'll just examine where's the mind taking me? So that's the Heart Sutra. I don't know, how do you kind of interpret that or relate to that with your own experience of fear?
Well, what's coming up for me is I am an empathic person. So when I read the news, I feel a lot. And sometimes I feel like, oh, I should feel what I think they must feel, you know, as a way to be with. But I have to have discipline. I have to pay attention to my intention there. Because nothing that I can imagine will actually be their suffering. So then I'm just putting myself through kind of a stressful and unnecessary and unhelpful loop.
Yes.
So I've had to learn how to be empathic without doing this mind thing of trying to understand how terrible that must have been for them.
Right, so there's like a kind of, the way I'm thinking about it now with your example is, the mind is no hindrance. So the mind, you know, is created of the form, feelings, perceptions, formations, consciousness, right? So we don't buy into that, or we have an awareness that says that's not always true, something like that. So you can have your empathy, but you have to kind of draw a line on where emotion takes you.
The drawing the line is just discipline. It's not like drawing a line that's going to keep me separate from the other person. It's just the discipline of not doing a loop over here, which has nothing to do with, and you know, what's happening.
Yes.
And it's just depleting my energy.
Yeah.
So there's just a discipline.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm changing my posture now to the way Avalokiteshvara sits sometimes.
Thank you for the talk. I think that was very powerful. And following the same, I guess, line of that previous question, I think sometimes I feel that allowing that deep feeling of empathy for the suffering of others, as well as, you know, sometimes I find myself ruminating about what can be done to help others, as well as follow my path and make changes. And it definitely can go from taking actions in the present moment and finding mindfulness to do something, to anxiety and fear about what can't be done. So I guess that balance of using that to be sort of an agent of change, doing the best you can, while also, you know, embodying bodhisattva, all of those, but while living, you know, a busy life in the city. So I guess speaking to how to embody the positive qualities while not, you know, stepping too far away from what's going on.
Would you repeat your question?
Yeah, I guess the question is, how can one while living, you know, a life filled with work and relationships and just like a lot of sort of busyness, so to speak, still engage with the suffering of others in a way that, you know, feels honest, and not get too caught up while also wanting to learn and hopefully make change.
Okay, I have a reply. Everything you do, do it for all beings. Because that just puts you into contact with reality. So whatever busy thing you're doing it for all beings. You're now walking out of your front door, and you're doing that for all beings. You're now walking down the street, you're doing that for all beings. This is not meant to be like piling on the pressure. I'm not asking you to cure and save and, you know, I'm just asking you to remember that we're all in this together. So that's really, you know, I guess it's a little dangerous for me to say that because people can feel really pressured by that, but no, that's not what I'm getting at. I'm just getting at when you do the thing, you do it for everybody because that's straightforward. And why drift away from that straightforwardness? Baizan, what did I tell you? What did I ask you when we were about to come into the Zendo?
You asked me if I remembered what to do.
And can you have the microphone back for just a moment? And what did you say?
I said, well, first I made a joke, and then I said that when I offer you the incense, I offer it for all beings.
So we went through that ceremony just before we walked into the Zendo, and I recommend that everybody adds that to their busy life. Does that meet your question?
Absolutely, yeah. I think sometimes I do remember to do something like that. Thanks. And I think, you know, some of the wisdom from the Heart Sutra of no self and Suzuki Roshi's teachings do reach me sometimes, but I'd say I still am early on the path, so thank you very much.
Well, we are together on the path.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe we do have time for one more.
Thank you for such an insightful talk. I wanted to go back to something you were talking about previously, and if you could give your definition of discipline and how you implement it in your practice in day-to-day life.
Thanks for asking that. I looked up that word too, and I didn't really like the definition. I didn't find it useful. So here I am using the word discipline, but I didn't find the definition of discipline to be really what I meant. So it's a great question. Thanks for noticing. But what I mean by discipline is really a close eye on my intention and bringing myself back into a posture that I feel like is concordant with what I want, or concordant with uprightness. So I guess I'm looping it back to intention. So discipline would be like look closely, be in a straightforward way. Like I said, I really like that word. Like just look at what you're actually doing. And what is your actual intention, and do they go together?
Thank you, that's very insightful.
You're welcome. Yes, noticing that was also very insightful. Thank you.